We recently amended our bylaws, and one of the changes was combining the secretary and treasurer into a secretary-treasurer. So we need to now elect someone for that position. Commissioner Schwartz was unable to be here today, but he did indicate to me that he was willing to act in that role unless someone else wanted it.
Hearing that, I'll offer that as a nomination for Secretary Treasurer.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 2, approve the minutes of the regular EDA meeting held on April 10th, 2018.
I'll offer a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 4 from the New Ulm Economic Development Coordinator regarding activities during the month of April 2018. Brian?
All right, Brian Toll, New Ulm Economic Development Corporation. You've got my April report in your packet. I will highlight a few things. First is we've been working with a consultant that has been hired by Windings to help them guide them through an expansion project. And in fact, tomorrow, Brian, Chris, and Dave Schnobrick, we will be having a conference call with the consultant and with Windings, or with the state of Minnesota representative, Lisa, and just to keep the ball rolling. So they're moving forward. As you probably know, Windings is a employee-owned business, so it's not like things happen quickly. It's got to go through committees and conferences, and it's not like an owner can say, I will do this. So it takes time, but it's moving forward. We recently participated in the Career Expo, and the Career Expo hosted or had over 50 businesses exhibiting and over 600 students attending. So it was very successful. We have had conversations with Dennis Sklazuzicek. I think I'm saying that right. He's the plant manager of LK Wood Products, and as you know, they're closing their shop, and just wanted to know what their plans were for, before it came out in the paper, what their plans were for dealing with their employees, and they will be holding job fairs for their employees. I think they've got over 20 businesses that are interested in interviewing those employees, so that's very good news. We've had ongoing communications with the owners of DLC Manufacturing regarding their purchase of a lot in the Airport Industrial Park for an expansion for that business. And then finally, I would point out that we were in contact with a representative from the Marshall Center for Business Development Commission who has a client that's buying a business in New Ulm, and they were interested in understanding what the non-bank financing options were for that business. Any questions?
Can we go back to LK for a little bit? Do you
Yeah.
know what their exit plans are, where it kind of stands today?
It's my understanding that sometime in the early summer that they will be having these job fairs and eventually closing down.
Okay. We don't know timetable yet, though.
Just early summer is all I'm understanding.
Right. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Entertain a motion, accepting the report.
I'll move it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the report. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 5 from the EDA staff regarding administrative activities during the month of April 2018. Heather?
Okay, we'll start with the Section 8 report. Note we had 86 vouchers on the program for the month of April. Housing assistance payments, disbursements from HUD exceeded payments to landlords by about $3,700. Administrative fee disbursements exceeded expenses by about $1,300. Note the unaudited balances for both funds on pages 3 and 4 of your report. And on page 5, note, we have 87 vouchers on the program as of May 1st with a waiting list of 67. Moving on to the public housing program. Note, expenses have exceeded revenues by just over $25,000 for the fiscal year. Note on page 8, Broadway House is fully leased with 55 on the waiting list, and on page 9, the family units have 2 vacancies with 29 on the waiting list. Both vacancies are spoken for. One will be moving in this month. The other one is scheduled for June 1st. Just wanted to give you an update on the operating reserve offset lawsuit. Housing authorities that participated in the first lawsuit received their payments for damages in February. They won the lawsuit back in July, so it took until February to actually receive their payment. As far as the second lawsuit that we are participating in, the federal government has requested, well, initially they had 60 days to respond. Then they requested 2 90-day extensions. And then on April 18th, they filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit on the grounds that the court lacks jurisdiction to consider the case. They did not bring that issue up in the first round lawsuit, so Cohen & Lyons, who is acting on behalf of the housing authorities, is intending to file an opposition to the motion to dismiss, and they expect that to happen in late July. So it's still moving along, and those are just some updates we've received recently that I wanted to pass along. Moving on to the EDA fund on page 10 of your report, note we have current cash assets of just under $685,000. Note expenses increased in April due to the payment of the first half of the 2018 assessments on the 9 unsold lots in Milford Heights Phase 1. Also note the New Ulm City Council approved the EDA amended bylaws at their meeting on April 17th. Property Rehabilitation Loan Program, available funds of about $262,000. There were some new inquiries in April and applications were sent out, but no new applications have been received. On page 13, you'll find the rental property report. Note cash assets of about $81,000. And concluding with the Garden Terrace Apartments report, Garden Terrace has 86 units leased with 48 on the waiting list. They currently have 2 vacancies, 1 turnover last month, and they have no move-out notices for June. Any questions?
Heather, we go back to the commercial loans. It says that we have 20 loans out currently for, this is on page, let me go back here. Shoot. I'm going to lose it.
Page
here.
11.
We had 20 loans out. Is there a chance for next month's meeting to give us, I don't know how much work that would be, to give us a list of who the 20 loans are out to and how much each loan is and when they're due?
Go to page 12.
Yeah, that's that.
On page 12?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, there they are. That was quick. Good job. Thank you.
Your wishes.
I have one quick question too. We've now advertised the lower lot prices for the Milford lots. Any inquiries or bites or
I've had
interest?
phone calls. I haven't received any bids. I think they're due in early June. I think we have about another month
Okay,
before the deadline.
but at least it's generated some phone calls.
I have received
Okay.
interest, yes.
Anybody else have anything for Heather?
I'll make a motion to accept Economic Development Authority administrative activities for the month of April 2018.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 6A, consider authorizing staff to solicit proposals for participation in the project-based voucher program. Heather?
Okay, this is something we've been working on for the past year. We have received approval from HUD to go ahead and convert 4 of our Section 8 Housing Choice vouchers into project-based vouchers. The original intent was to allocate them to the State Street apartments, but we found out that because they are a tax credit project and they used that to get additional points on their tax credit application, we can't give the vouchers to them. We have to go out for competitive proposals and give other people the opportunity to put their name in for those vouchers. So that was a little glitch we came across. So we're going through that process now. I don't anticipate that we'll receive any other proposals, but you never know. So what we're required to do is advertise to provide broad public notice of the opportunity to submit proposals. We intend to publish an ad in the New Ulm Journal once a week for 3 weeks, starting on May 15th, if we're authorized to do so. The deadline to submit a proposal will be 30 days from the 3rd publication. So we're looking at a timeline of today getting approval to solicit proposals, run the ad May 15th, May 22nd, and May 29th. Set a bid opening for June 29th to give us the chance to open the proposals and review them, and then present them to the board at the meeting on July 10th for a selection of a proposal. Under primary issues, I just note that we are proposing to issue the 4 project-based vouchers to house long-term homeless individuals or families. Assistance for this RFP may be authorized for newly constructed housing only. Assistance or subsidy is provided for units that meet the program standards. Housing structures may consist of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units and must be located in Brown County, Minnesota. That's where our jurisdiction is for our voucher program. And all housing units considered to receive assistance must meet the Section 8 housing quality standards. So only proposals received that meet that criteria would be considered. And that's why I say it's unlikely. I don't know of any other new construction projects out there that will be housing long-term homeless individuals, unless there's something on the horizon that I'm unaware of. Any questions on that? And I've included a copy of the RFP for your review. I had the city attorney review it to make sure we're following our policy that we just adopted, and they said it looked okay.
So how do we publicize that information, so in case there was somebody that wanted to start a project? Would it just be on our website, or
We'll run the ad in the paper 3 times.
3 times? Okay.
Are you talking long-term future
Yeah.
as compared to this project? I think what you're saying is, how do we let people know this is always potentially available 5 years from now?
We just need to be thinking about that.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, if it's something that we want to move forward with, I'm pretty sure we can just put it online, on the webpage, just saying this is an option that could be considered for your project, and then they can call us for more information, and we can work out the details moving forward.
For these 4 vouchers, once we select a proposal and we enter into a contract with an owner,
Right.
they wouldn't be available to anyone else until the end of that contract. So I suppose when that term ends,
Then we would publicize again, probably.
we could let people
Okay.
know they're available again and run the ad in the paper. And
We also have the option of
Extending.
allocating additional project-based vouchers
Yes.
if another property owner came forward and wanted to look at doing that.
we
I think
could. We
up
can
to
go up
20
to 20% of our
20%.
124. So converting 4, we still have room to convert additional vouchers if we choose to do that at some time
Okay.
in the
All right,
future.
thank you.
Any more questions for Heather? Seeing none, entertain a motion.
I'll offer the motion to authorize staff to solicit proposals for participation in the project-based voucher program.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 6B, consider resolution to declare surplus property and authorize disposition.
I'll move it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
It's a
Motion carries.
resolution.
Oh, sorry. Heather, call the roll.
Commissioner Brum,
Yes.
Commissioner Fix,
Yes.
Commissioner Yanni,
Yes.
Commissioner Schultz,
Yes.
and President Schmitz.
Yes, motion carries. Item 6C, consider motion authorizing payment of the public housing program claims.
Anything there we should be worried about?
I'll just note, we've had 6 turnovers in our public housing units, so we do have some additional expenses related to the turnovers this month.
Okay.
Noting that, I'll make a motion to approve the public housing claims.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 7, excuse me, 7A, consider motion adopting revised income limits for the Brown County Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher and Public Housing Programs. Heather?
On an annual basis, the Department of Housing and Urban Development is required by law to update the income limits that determine eligibility of applicants for HUD's programs. People eligible for the programs must be very low income or extremely very low income households. Just note the median family income for a household of 4 for Brown County increased from $67,900 to $70,300. HUD sets the income limits, and they used information from the U.S. Census Bureau's 2012 American Community Survey median family income estimates, which they use as a basis for calculating HUD's annual income limits. You can see the current income limits listed below that were effective April 14th, 2017, as compared to the new income limits effective April 1st, 2018. Any questions on that?
Anybody have any questions for Heather on it?
I'll just note, sorry, on these that the line in bold, the very low income limits, households, depending on their size, need to be below those incomes to be eligible for the waiting list. The extremely very low income limit, which is the top line, people under those income limits are given a priority on our waiting list with our point system that we use. So I think last month or 2 months ago, I was talking about how we were serving the highest priority of our Section 8 waiting list at this time. That's the extremely very low income limits. We've offered vouchers to everyone on the waiting list that meets that criteria, and we've been able to offer some vouchers to the higher income group, which is rare. So as far as Section 8, our waiting list is in good shape currently, which is nice.
Great, thank you.
I'll make a motion adopting the revised income limits for Brown County Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher and Public Housing Programs effective April 1st, 2018.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 8A, consider authorizing application for a federal home loan bank grant funds. Heather?
All right, I'll give you an overview, and then I think Chris and Commissioner Brom will probably help me out with more information on this. We are part of the Housing Institute team for New Ulm, and at one of our meetings, we became aware of the opportunity to apply for federal home loan bank funds under their competitive affordable housing program. This is a competitive subsidy award subject to scoring criteria, eligibility requirements, and feasibility guidelines. The funds are available for purchase, construction, or rehabilitation of affordable housing, owner-occupied or rental housing units. The 2018 maximum subsidy award for each application is $750,000 for a project and up to $40,000 per housing unit. The Federal Home Loan Bank, or FHLB, also has a down payment assistance program, which is a separate application. This program can assist households with funds toward down payment, closing costs, or repairs associated with a home purchase. For that program, the 2008 maximum subsidy award is $250,000 per application and up to $5,000 per individual household. Applications for these programs are available on an annual basis. Sponsor applicants can apply for owner-occupied rehab, rental rehab, and down payment assistance program funding in the same year. Staff, like I say, just became aware of the opportunity to apply for these funds. Housing authorities are eligible to apply as a sponsor applicant, but they do require the support of an FHLB member bank to submit an application and receive disbursements. Alliance Bank is a member bank and has indicated that they would partner with us if we choose to submit an application. There was a pre-application process in February, which we were unaware of, so we did not participate in that. But you do not need to complete the pre-application in order to apply. The 2008 applications became available on May 1st, and the deadline to apply is May 28th, 2018. So we have a very tight turnaround to get this application submitted. Because of that, although we could apply for all three programs, we are just focusing right now on applying for a grant to start an owner-occupied rehab program for this application cycle. The idea is to kind of go through the process, learn, and then come back next year in 2019 when we've had more time to work and go through the pre-application process and apply for one or more of these programs next year. The pre-application process kind of lets you know how your application scores and what you could do to get your score higher for the actual application submission to hopefully be awarded the funding. So we've missed that step, so we are going to do our best to submit a good application, but it is our first time through the process. For the owner-occupied rehab program, the loan minimum per household is $17,000 and the loan maximum is $40,000 per housing unit. The subsidy must be used in 24 months for owner-occupied projects per their rules, and the owner-occupied rehab loans are forgivable after 5 years. It's my understanding if they would take this loan and 3 years in they sell their house, they would have to pay back a portion of the loan. They'll prorate
per
it.
year.
We are recommending starting small and doing sort of a pilot program because we do have that 24-month time frame to spend the money. We don't want to ask for more than we can actually use in that time period. We also kind of want to use the pilot program to determine if there's a demand for these funds. And if we find there is, we could apply for additional funding next year to continue or expand the program. So at this time, we're proposing to request funding for 3 projects at $40,000 a unit, or a total of $120,000. Now, if we would be awarded that funding and we start the program, which we would need to create, we'll do that if we receive the funding. And an application comes in and they only need $20,000, well, that means maybe we could fund 4 projects. So depending on what each application comes in at, we could be funding 3 or more projects, if that makes sense. And Chris or Dan, if you want to add anything?
Yeah, like Heather said, we want to run the pilot project first to see the demand that's out there, and running it in Santa Ana, we did have interest running a program like this, and it was more geared towards the low to moderate income families to help them get the repairs they needed. Roofs, attics, insulation, windows, kind of get their house up to code, and help them if they didn't have that extra cash just lying around for those improvements. So we figure it'll help the community, make the improvements necessary so their energy bill could essentially be a little bit lower and stuff. So.
Yeah, and I think, and Heather can probably agree with this, over the last year when we were involved with the H&I group, this was a recurring theme that we had seen in the community with people wanting to keep their existing homes up to a certain standard where it's not deteriorating. And I think a common theme we would see would be people getting to that age where they could no longer physically be able to do some of these maintenance things on their own, but yet otherwise had the ability to stay in their home. So I think we could really fill a need in the community with looking at this program to get funds out there to those folks that are income eligible to get their homes. And I think one of the things, if you look at the broader picture, is that we want to maintain a good and vibrant, healthy existing housing stock, and maintaining homes in that fashion is going to allow them to one day then be saleable and to allow for new homeowners to come in. And so hopefully that's what we're trying to look with this objective. I look at it, really our only cost at it for this point will be some of the staff's time in order to get the paperwork processed. And I believe it's a pretty modest for the $120,000. We could really make a splash, but yet get ourselves kind of acclimated with this sort of thing and really do a full assessment of the needs. We kind of, at this point, just have anecdotal stuff where people sound like there's a interest, but this would really gauge it if we were able to get the money and put it out there into the community, and then see from there we can make a better assessment going forward what our future needs might be. So
why 3 homes? I mean, where did that number come from?
well,
Just curious.
I think, go ahead.
So essentially, we just did, the cap was, the max you can allow was 40,000. So we just figured we can do 3 houses at 40,000, and if they come in under, each one does 30, then we can do a 4th house, and
Yeah.
it gives us a little bit of wiggle room. But I talked with Elwood, and he said 40,000 is more than enough to do a really good rehab. And if they only
Pretty-
want to do their roof, then there's
Pretty substantial
wiggle room.
rehab for an average
Yeah.
home in New Ulm, I think.
Does that grant have any wiggle room, or could we in the future look at using those funds for some of the downtown apartments that are above the stores? Is that
That would be rental.
in there anywhere?
That would be a rental rehab.
Rental one, yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
something we
Was
might
not.
apply for next year.
That would be a separate program, and that we could gear our application to meet that specific need. I mean, I think that's the nice thing about this program is we put the application forward, and we could say, hey, we've got, and I'm just going to throw a number up, 40 downtown apartment units, and of that, 30 of them could stand to use some rehabilitation and an average cost of this. The more specific we have our numbers put together, I think the more points are going to be awarded, so especially when we clearly identify that kind of a need. So I think this could be the first round of many that we could be participating. I think too, and I don't know exactly how it's scored, but if we put money on the table locally, they're willing to match it with their grant, that could potentially drive up our scoring as well.
Well, Chris did some analysis. So we had a conference call with the staff from Minnesota Housing Partnership. Is that right? MHP.
Yeah.
And she has helped people apply for these funds in the past, and so she was kind of walking us through it. And it sounds like last year the people that were awarded grants were scoring 61 or higher. Chris did an analysis of what our score might come in at, and
It was between 47 and 52.
so we're a little low, but every year it depends on who you're competing against, and maybe the people awarded funding this year, maybe the lowest score will be 40, and maybe we'll make it, maybe we won't, we don't know. But I don't know if there was anything in the scoring for matching
Not for
funds to
matching,
get
and
additional.
Yeah,
I read
I-
that thing multiple times and I didn't see it, but.
You know, I thought
the
Sarah
rep-
mentioned something about there was a requirement for
Right.
matching
In
funds,
my
but
mind,
we're not
I
seeing
think
it.
if, for instance, their minimum is 17,000, and say we had funds available down to 8,000 or something to cover that gap between 8 and 17, I think that could potentially, it'd be a part of a more comprehensive program that we would run. But I think if we could score higher would be is if we identified specific number of units. And if we looked at our housing study and looked at the age demographics, that we're hopeful that this is going to be mainly for people who are elderly, who are physically unable to maybe do some of these projects on their own, and then we can facilitate that. And if they're on a fixed income, I mean, some of those things may fill some of those gaps too. Right now, we're still working on the app, I imagine, right, Chris? So, I mean, there's probably a lot more things we could probably fill in, and we may need some additional assistance from staff too, as far as what number of houses are in the community that are of a certain age and older that might be more prone to be needing more updating and that sort of thing. Or we might look at getting information from PUC, for instance, to say how many homes in the community may not meet certain energy standards, and we could throw that kind of information into our application. So if we get the needs established out there greater, then I think that's going to help in the scoring too, but we're still working on that, so.
We're also
That's pretty good if we got that high just in the first go-around.
We're also hoping that because we're putting in a small ask, that we might get funded just, you know, because we're presenting it as a pilot program, and maybe they'll just let us do that. So,
Never know.
The city did have a downtown apartment program in the last 8 years. It was a downtown program. We had two sections of it. One was for the apartments and one was for the facade and the actual store for energy efficiency, windows, and the facade money went extremely well. The apartment money did not. It also included a string, like a lot of, you know, federal, state money does, which a portion of the apartments had to be for low, moderate income. And we had many people interested, but if they only had 2 units, one was going to be low, moderate income, and one was not. If they had 1 unit, which is pretty normal, then it had to be low, moderate income. So that was probably the least desirable program that we've probably run in a long time. A lot of interest, and when it came right down to it, I think we probably had to turn back 80% of the money for that particular activity. So if you have a program that doesn't have those strings for the downtown, I think there's interest. But if you have to deal with any state or federal money, they're going to require that low, moderate income criteria, which really is not a likable part of the program for a lot of the property owners. Another item that we ran into was if you had lead-based paint, and you were going to have families, small children, you had to remove, the paint aspect of it. If it was going to be for senior housing, and you didn't have it because most seniors aren't sitting at the window, looking out the window, chewing on the wood, the wood sill where the lead paint was usually found. So it was kind of fraught with some requirements that were not desirable. So it of the two programs, the apartment one was the one that was really did not turn out real well.
And that's the reason I brought that up. We had our youth summit here a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of the youth that were there really talked about when they get done with college wanting to come back and where do they want to live, and a lot of them said, we'd love to live downtown, and we'd like to live in the apartments in the downtown district, and so that's kind of where that came from. So, But some of them said they got to be fixed up a little bit before we'd move in there. So,
Well, the other, the other item I guess you could consider, and we've talked about this, for the last year and a half, just because we were talking about housing, is that with, Garden Terrace having available funds, we've got, over $1 million+ sitting, in cash. We use that for fixing, repairing, and unforeseen things that come up. But isn't there a number per unit that they suggest we keep in reserve per
And
apartment?
I don't know,
what it is.
Reg always would refer to that he would prefer, I don't know if
Yeah.
it was 6 months worth of operating cash or
Yeah,
if it
so
was.
my point, I guess, is we can anticipate, or we can do that calculation, and out of, $1.1 million, maybe we need to keep $600,000 in ready reserve for unforeseen events, but that frees up $500,000 that we can run our own program if we so desired. So, we can rely on other entities, but the whole purpose of paying off Garden Terrace and keeping that property owned by the EDA was to utilize those funds to pay off our debt, number one, but then secondly, to utilize for programming.
And I think we need to have some serious discussions in the very near future on that topic. Where does the EDA want to go? And, if those 9 properties sell off, we're done with that project, and where do we want to move next? And I don't know if we want to set that as an agenda item for June and start talking about where does this board want to go?
Chris and I have had some discussions too on maybe doing a down payment assistance program with that money. The idea was get them paid off, get them debt-free,
Yep.
and then use that revenue for other programs.
Enhancing any other housing program
Right.
we have, or utilizing some of that funds for a different commercial industrial
Yeah.
loan program. Maybe
Well, whatever we come up
do-
with is going to take some time to develop, so.
Yeah,
Let's
maybe
start
we do
having
greater
the
than
talks,
$50,000 now. Because we've got the up to $50,000 for our program.
Right.
There's many things we can do with it, and we just need to, I guess, address what that program might look like, and then bring it back to the EDA for you guys' review. See if it's worth pursuing.
Right.
I agree. I think, let the staff do some work on it ahead of time, and then, maybe if you need somebody, assistance, a month or two down the road, pick one of the commissioners to sit in on it, and then when you come up with a decent plan, bring it back. We don't need to rush it, but.
No.
No, and I think I've met with an individual that Heather recommended, a fellow out of Red Wing, and they've started their own program for both development. And really, they've set it affordable housing trust fund, and then out of that, they've got a rehab and developer program for new rental housing, and then they've got a down payment assistance program that's all locally funded. And I think you really alluded to it well, Brian, where if we're getting money from other entities, federal, state, it always comes with those kind of strings attached, and they may or may not align with what our local needs are. So there's some, I think, benefit if we have the means to fund something locally. We can make it flexible to what our local needs are. Nobody's going to know better than the people sitting in the community what our local needs might be. So I think to that end, I think that's a great path forward for us to start considering what we want to do. And we don't have, I think the idea is, and now with Chris here and his experience, to draw upon some of that with economic development. And it can go, housing, new businesses and economic development in that capacity, and then community development if there are. I look at it as 3 distinct opportunities that the EDA could be directly involved with in terms of setting some things up. But I think the main thing is let's get the nuts and bolts, the infrastructure of those programs going, and then we can start looking at funding them. The one thing that impressed me about Red Wing is that they weren't going to fund all these programs overnight. They just wanted to get them started, and then over a 3-year period, we're going to allocate so many dollars of funds into them each year, and then have a little flexibility. If one program really took off and had a greater need, they could kind of, as they went, shift money around and looked at what ones, provided the best benefit for the dollar spent or whatever. So I totally think it's time. We got the new guy here, let's put him to work or whatever, so.
Well, the nice thing about the Garden Terrace Fund is it's rental income. Even trying to use the EDA fund for a program, there are laws and statutes and what, of things what we can use that money for. The Garden Terrace money, I think, has a lot of potential for flexibility, and we don't have all those
Yep, very true.
red tape bureaucracy hurdles to get through.
The only thing it just is a requirement, and we're doing it right now, would just be that finance would have to segregate
Yep.
and make sure we're not using the federal monies to do projects, but we're already doing that, so that should really not be a big issue. It's just creating the program. What's the program going to look like? And as Mr. Braun, states, there are other cities that have got programs that. It's not that we have to go sit in a room someplace and try and think up of how would a down payment assistance program work. We can contact many cities and get copies of what they've got going on, and so it should be fairly easy to put a program together for a multitude of different areas. But yeah, as we build them, we'll just keep bringing them back to the EDA and seeing if it's something. We're going in the right direction, and then
And
you
that-
guys can allocate or not allocate funding as you deem necessary.
That is one of our identified projects for our Housing Institute team, and we have our next retreat the first week in June. So I think through that process, we can come back with a recommendation to the EDA, so that's maybe how we'll look at developing a proposal to bring is through the Housing Institute. If
With that, I'm going to
sounds-
offer a motion to authorize the application for the Federal Home Loan Bank grant funds for an owner-occupied rehab program.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. But no more business. Meeting adjourned.
Dalton, it better be successful. It's your
Gotcha.
first.
I know. Well, we
All on
still
you.
get to work
It's
in
all on
time for
you.
my 9 o'clock meeting.
All right.